God has an amazing plan for your life, and He knows exactly how to get it across. In spite of your frailties, in spite of all your insecurities, He knows how to do it. And my next guest, they are a living example of how God can do some amazing things in people's lives. So I want you to welcome our music guests, Shay and Michi Guess. Yeah, so glad that you're here.
We are so honored to get to be here.
Listen, you guys sound so good, but you're not quite country, and you're not contemporary, and you're not
Southern
quartet.
gospel.
It's not Southern gospel. It's kind of a blend of that. How did well, first of all, how did you get involved in this thing? How did you get started?
Her before me. See, she was an orphan in South Korea. Her dad was in the American Air Force, and he was married to a Japanese lady. They couldn't have children of their own, so they go over to South Korea, and they adopt Michi. And then a year later, went back and adopted a little boy. And
wow.
About 2 years into that little family, the Lord called him home. He passed away in an accident.
In a boating accident.
Oh, in a boating accident. Wow.
And her mother, adopted mother, couldn't take care of her. And so somebody with some wisdom put him on an airplane and brought him to the United States to live with her adopted dad's grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And she took him in, and she was a sainted Church of God.
Yes.
Oh, yeah?
Bobby pin flies on Sunday.
Now, where in the United States did you land?
Manatee, Mississippi. Yes.
Say that 3 times.
Deep in the South.
Manatee, Mississippi.
I'll let you say that.
And I will tell you this, that it was truly a culture shock.
I'm sure.
Because I was used to living in the Orient.
Right.
And I come here to live with my adoptive grandmother, and it was like moving in with Granny Clampett.
She had a farm.
We had a farm.
Listen, I was raised on the West Coast, and when I came to the South, it was very similar cultural shock.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was a big deal.
I was wanting like sushi and sashimi and all that kind of stuff. It was nowhere to be found because she didn't even know what that stuff was.
Yeah.
So the closest thing that she could get her hands on when it come to sushi and sashimi, I call it my redneck sushi, sardines.
Oh, wow.
That's what I lived on.
Oh,
with
my
sardines and
goodness.
rice.
Wow, that's funny.
So about, 2 years after she was here, she still hasn't been able to learn to speak English at all.
Right.
Her grandmother listened to all things gospel.
Okay.
She had records, and all she played was gospel music on Sunday morning when the TV came on. So she started picking up these songs and mimicking the songs in English.
Yeah.
She's 6.5 years old, and Tom T. Hall invites her to come up to Nashville and cut a gospel album.
Oh, whoa.
She did 10 songs, and they had 3 days scheduled. She did them in, 8 hours?
8 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and so after that, she's all over the place singing around home. My granddad has a quartet. I played the drums when I'm about 11 years old.
Yeah.
Grew up with the family, and I used to go hear her sing when I was a kid. That's what I tell
Now
everybody.
be careful.
And so at some point, we rode the same school bus together.
Yeah.
And we would always get on the bus on Mondays, and she'd say, well, where did y'all sing this weekend? Well, we sung here. Well, where did you guys sing this weekend?
Oh,
and so
wow.
we sort of had a budding friendship, and I figured at some point I had to tell my granddad, they need a drummer, and you know, there's enough people with you that I can go play for her group.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's a lot prettier than anybody in my family group. So I go to help their family group out, and we travel together for a couple of years as kids. And at some point during all of that, we go to high school, and she starts failing algebra, and I'm really good at algebra. So this is a good ministry for some of you folks out there. Don't think you ever use algebra in your life. You learn algebra, and you can marry up.
There you go.
So yeah, her grandmother asked me to tutor her.
They call that missionary mathematics.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's right.
At the end of the semester, we both almost failed algebra because we fell in love. So and shortly after school, we traveled, we sang together, and we got married really young. We were traveling and singing and going all over the country singing, and We've been married. This year will be 30 years.
Yeah.
We've been married.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
30 years. Congratulations. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we don't look a day over 22.
No, that's great for 22. Yeah.
See,
yeah.
that's another thing. The Lord will, restore the years.
That's right.
Yeah, but I happen to know that there was a real miracle that took place after you got married.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You had quite a challenge.
Yes, we did.
7 years into our marriage, we get a call. Actually, we was going to go see her adopted mother in Japan. We wanted to go because it had been like 20-something years at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
That she hadn't
and
seen
she's
her.
still living in
Japan.
Japan?
At
Wow.
the time she was. She was
Oh,
still
yeah.
living in Japan.
Yeah.
So she had wrote a card. They hadn't even talked or spoken in 22 years at that point, I think.
Yeah.
And so we got a card in our mailbox with her information. We sent a card over. She calls the house. We get to renewing this relationship with this Japanese lady, and we try to get a passport, and it
Red flag.
raised a red flag with immigration, and turns out she was undocumented.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So when she came over, with the Air Force had brought her over here. She was only supposed to be here for 2 years, and of course we didn't know, the family didn't know immigration law.
Right.
So we had to go to court in 1999, and they wanted to deport her. And
And you're married.
7 years in. Yeah.
7 years in,
That's right.
and they're going to
They're gonna deport
deport
you. 5
you.
years
They're
at that
threatening to
point, yeah.
deport you, even though you're married. Wow.
Well, about 5 years at that point. So yeah, we go in without an attorney. We thought we'll just ask for a little grace. We didn't get it much. They showed us the plane ticket, said you got 6 months to get you an attorney.
Wow.
And we're going to do this the right way. And we had to go find an attorney. Unloaded all our life savings that we had up to that point to
Our little
secure
nest
one.
egg, everything we had.
Wow.
And the guy was so gracious, took our case, and we go back in 6 months. The night before we go back, this is what's so awesome. The night before we go back, we're praying. Our worship leaders at the time, which is our mentors of ours, are Jim and Jamie Gunner from Tupelo, Mississippi. Mentors of ours, they're praying, and Miss Jamie, she's right in the middle of her prayer. She says, Lord, I want this judge to apologize to Michi. And Jim says, you can't pray that. She says, well, the Bible says I can come boldly to the throne.
Yeah.
So I can make
that's
my
the highest
petitions.
court of all. Yeah.
So I'm saying,
Yeah.
he's the King of Kings, he's the judge of all judges, so
Yeah.
I want him to apologize, So we go to court, the whole thing is totally different. They asked the stenographer to leave, the reporter to leave, they call Michi and her brother up, and the judge just goes to town on the immigration attorneys and says, this should have never happened, there's got to be a better path. They go through this whole thing, and he says, I'm going to let them start from scratch, as if they just came here today.
Yes.
They're going to file their papers. Her husband's going to, be a sponsor. He does do all of that. And right before we're getting ready to leave, he goes, oh, by the way, and he leans up and he says,
Come on.
young lady,
Come on.
young man, on behalf of the United States of America, I formally apologize that you ever had to come to this courtroom. Our
Glory to
attorney that
God.
cost us a lot of money didn't even say 3 words the whole time. So,
The Lord heard your prayer
Yes,
and
sure did.
made sure he steered that whole thing just to let you know.
Yes.
So the song "He Never Left Me" is a direct
Wow,
result
wow.
of that,
Yeah, that's
because even when we didn't know he was around, he was making things happen.
Yeah.
And when it seemed like it was so impossible, he made a way. And he never left my side.
Yeah.
He never left me.
Yeah. Sounds just like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made us a promise. He'll never leave us nor forsake
Nor
us.
forsake us.
So that we can boldly say, the Lord's our helper.
That's right.
Yeah, that's our. Now, you are currently in a different role, even though you still sing, you still minister with music, but you also have another ministry to disabled people.
Yeah, we're disability advocates. People find themselves where they can't work anymore and they don't know how to weave through the legalities of that. The Social Security Administration allows people that are non-attorneys to study and become, it's not necessarily called accredited, but we're able to, with their blessing, act as if we're attorneys up into the administrative law part of it.
Right.
Because a lot of attorneys have bigger fish to fry, so
Right.
what they do is they pass that work over to people
Sure.
like us.
Sure.
And in order for the court and the system to know that we know what we're doing, we go through a series of continuing education. I'm actually a board member of the National Association of Disability Reps, NADR.org. And we go to fight for people with disabilities
Give it everything we got.
every single
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
And the way it works is we can't get paid to do our work unless they win. So we have to do this all for free.
Right.
Up front,
Yeah.
without, and at the end of it, if we can get a win and we can convince them to pay them
Yeah.
their retro fees and fees going forward, then Social Security does the work
Takes
and
care of it, yeah.
takes care of it and pays us. So we're fortunate enough that we can do that, and because when you go into the church, there's a lot of people hurting in the church.
Right.
The church can't take care of everybody financially.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that you can always, we try to make a point to talk to anybody that wants to talk, and now we're moving into more Medicare type consultations because that kind of marries together.
Yeah, yeah.
And to be able to consult people and say, hey, you've got options and you've got a way, and then if that don't work, we'll pray with you.
Absolutely.
She's led people to the Lord.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a frontline ministry
Yes.
for people that are dealing with a difficult transition in their life. That is always an upheaval mentally, emotionally.
Yes.
And they're looking for answers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've been able to lead people to the Lord?
I have actually talked to 3 or 4 that has never accepted Jesus Christ into their life, and it was just an open door opportunity
Wow.
to share Jesus with them.
Wow.
And I mean, just praying the sinner's prayer with them,
Wow. That's awesome.
And
That's
not
that
just
is
that,
awesome.
but just people that wanted to end their life. They didn't want to be a burden to their
Suicidal.
families. They didn't
Yeah.
want to be a burden to society.
Yeah.
And in the middle of this, we would catch on. Holy Spirit, I guess, is the only way you can explain it.
Yeah.
Something wrong, something going, and they start to talk to you, and they break down, and they cry, and we say, you know what? Just hang on a little bit longer because
Wow.
we know that there is an answer. And
Absolutely.
it always works out that they'll come back and they get that sigh of relief and they breathe. Now, you can't win every case because it's so,
Right.
everybody's cases are different.
They're
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
But we know within a degree of difficulty early on in the process
Yeah.
how it's going to turn out,
Yeah.
Sure.
to some degree.
So how do you marry the music ministry along with this disability, assistance that you're helping with people? Do you get a chance to where you can marry those?
Well, when we go out and do programs, what we're trying to do now in more of the Christian country genre is take it beyond the 4 walls of the church. Look for community centers or civic centers, in venues, and bring in well-known acts with us. That's kind of our vision, is to do that, and use our disability practice to sponsor those, and then be able to give people in a large, room some information. You may know someone that's dealing with a problem, and they don't have anybody to represent them, and we're here to say you can lay eyes on us, and here we are.
Wow.
Instead of you coming to us, we're coming to you.
Wow. So the music and the disability kind of become one.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so our songs too, like the "Going Back Home" song that we put out. We have a music video on YouTube there. It's mainly towards runaways and people that it's a prodigal son story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on
Now, do you write all of your own music?
We've got all of our own music.
Oh, you do it all. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, we were fortunate to team up with Dreamland, a record company called Dreamland Entertainment in Nashville. Our producer, Jonathan Goodwin, at first wanted us to do some more. They want you to do like a little bit of this and a little bit of original, but a little bit of cover tunes. So we were like, no, that's not what we're about. And he stepped back and saw the vision, and he said, I'm going to let you run with it. And we've been
Really?
running with it since. We're
Wow.
working on our second album now.
Oh, wow. Wow. So when is that going to come out?
It's probably going to be later on this year, first
yeah?
of next year, because we still got 1 or 2 more songs on this album that we're going to release. Our radio folks told us today that we had 1 or 2 more they wanted to release to radio.
Wow.
So.
Wow. So where do you find your inspiration for songwriting? I always like asking the people that write songs. Where do you find your inspiration?
It's really interesting.
Okay. That's what I usually hear, but then I want to hear the breakdown of what interesting means.
When I read scripture or watch TV or listen to conversation, I see a movie playing out in my mind a lot of times, and I try to break that down into 3.5, 4 minutes of poetry. How do you make that work? So for me, I'll come up with like going back home, for instance. Somebody gave me a mandolin. I never had played a mandolin in my life.
Yeah.
But I learned 3 chords on that mandolin. And it was the Going Back Home course.
Oh, wow.
You right?
Yeah.
And so as I'm singing that, going back home, I got to thinking about the prodigal son story. And a friend of mine says, well, that's interesting. What if you wrote it about a girl? So then we changed that.
That's
Made it
awesome.
in today's modern time.
Yeah.
So what, Michi, what do you add to? Do you add little edits here and there, or?
Criticism.
I sing them, but
Yeah, you sing beautifully, by the
thank
way.
you.
Yeah.
Well, what I do is I'll say, well, how about adding this, add that, or,
That word didn't work when I tried to sing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because those are things that are as the artist.
Right.
I know that that's not really what we're called, but as the artist, you need to have that.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. I'm so glad you guys came on to Atlanta Live. Thank you so much for being with us. We're looking forward to hearing more.
Yeah.
Right after the break, we're going to break right now, and then we'll be back to hear more of Shay and Michi. Atlanta Live, and Shay and Michi are coming to sing This Day.
The ceiling would fall in when a sinner like me came in and sat in a pew. All the singing started stirring something inside of me, and I didn't know what to do. Up walked the preacher, invited me. He opened up his Bible and started preaching about grace. He said all that I'd done could be forgiven. All I'd have to do is believe and I'd be saved. On the day said, stand up, and they started singing Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. I had a death grip on the back of an old pew. I let go, stepped in the aisle, and I went down. On the day that I got saved, He came and was saved. Yes, on the day that I got saved.
Come on now, if that doesn't get your crank going, I just don't know. That was powerful. That was powerful.